we must talk about the G20 Summit. I'm going to talk about it every day because every day there is something to talk about the G20 Summit. Yesterday we told you about how the National Security Guard has been brought in. They've been placed on various building tops. They're a proper sniper, like, you know, all those Hollywood movies. All of that is happening in the national capital because we're trying to build it into a fortress. Now take a look at this. For G20, rainbow shades on Delhi walls. The Delhi cops getting chain cutters to tackle protesters as well. The G20 must focus on development, not politics, says Amitabh Kant, who's the former Niti Aayog, CEO. So much is that is happening in terms of the G20 Summit. Take a look at this, a night vision which says a city decked up. At various places, you know, these murals have come up, these lightings, the decorations have come up when we're talking about the G20 Summit. But the summit clash, this is how the Times of India puts it, the summit clash, cops are going to get chain and bolt cutters to break the G20 protests. The segment is called Curbing Protests. The intel input: demonstrators, Tibetans mainly, may try to stage a protest against Chinese President Xi Jinping. Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's hotel may be targeted by demonstrators. In terms of the police's preparedness, the cops have been shown videos of modus operandi used by protesters during past summits. Cops have also studied the protest patterns in the West and then decided their counteraction. Focus is to curb and snap flash demonstrators. Cops have divided the areas and routes near venues into 11 zones that will be headed by additional deputy commissioners of police. 5 to 6 police stations have been identified in Outer North, Outer and Rohini districts where protesters will be detained. Social media teams have been formed to keep a watch on protests and demonstrations. And in terms of the anti-protest equipment that the police has now got, so it's like a new lease of life for these police personnel as well. They've had to do their own study. I'm telling you, they're not happy with the G20 Summit, with the work that they had to do, clocking in double shifts. The police to procure chain or bolt cutters to tackle protesters. The cop will also deploy anti-protest vehicles called Vikrant with riot handling equipment like tear gas shells, batons and the water cannon. The vehicles will be deployed at 6 strategic locations around venues and along the routes. Police has also been asked to keep blankets ready to stop immolation bids in central Delhi. So self-immolation bids in central Delhi. Take a look at that. That's what I was talking about. A city that is decked up in the night, from B20 to G20. One earth, one family, one future. Words of the Prime Minister.
Well, G20 has a history of seeing protests. We have seen climate activists going ahead with the protests. We have seen, in many places, some local political events also being highlighted, because there are these diasporas that tend to take up causes in their own homes or in their home countries, and then they try to, in fact, use the G20 venue for those protests. That's one part of it. And as you rightly pointed out, Kabir, yesterday when I was on the way to the airport, I did see a lot of these murals, a lot of the city being decked up for G20, and a lot of welcome messages for the G20 delegates, saying that we welcome G20 delegates, boards and signs being kept all across the place. And of course, what the Prime Minister has been hinting at also, one world, one family, one future. He's been has also been spread out in many places. And recently, you also showed me how the paintings at underpasses, flyovers were also being done up to display the complete culture of India as such.
Absolutely. But there's another question at play over here, Varghese, which is that of the traders, because the traders have questioned the closure of Lutyens' markets from the September 7th till the 10th. So a lot of people will have to do away with their business for these 3 days.
And also they've been told that they have to give paid holidays to their employees. The traders have been told that they have to give paid holidays for their employees as well.
Well, if they don't give paid holidays, then that means you're landing up in a soup because of the protest.
Yeah, and it's 5 days of business, almost a week of business that you're not looking at, because from 7th through 11th, I think the shutdown has been called on. So a lot of them are not happy with that, because 5 days of business tends to be going, and that is what is worrying most of the traders. They said that they had to be consulted before they went ahead with this kind of.
So even as the Delhi Metro achieves a record of 69.9 lakh passenger journeys in a single day, there are 8 hospitals that have been stationed on high alert, a team of medicos on 24-hour duty at the hotels as well. The Delhi government has put 5 government and 3 private hospitals on high alert to ensure that healthcare arrangements are in place during the G20 summit in early September. A team of 80 medicos Varghese, including doctors, nursing staff, has also been formed for deployment at hotels where the guests will stay.
Since you were talking about G20, there is an interesting bit that's coming in. Apparently, there's a cloud of uncertainty over Chinese President Xi's G20 summit participation. China is exploring options to depute Premier Li Qiang. Russian president has already deputed Foreign Minister Lavrov for this. So China urges, you know, in the backdrop of what has happened, I think that is the reason why they have decided on that. So there's a cloud of uncertainty whether Xi will be attending this particular meet. I'll just read out the first 2 paragraphs of
Wait a
that
minute, so
article.
there's a possibility that Xi Jinping might not attend?
Yeah, that is, and you would have Premier Li Qiang actually going ahead and attending the G20 meet. With a cloud of uncertainty hanging over Chinese President Xi Jinping's participation at the G20 summit, China is exploring options to depute Premier Li Qiang for the mega events to be held here from September 8th to 10th. While most heads of governments and states of G20 members and invitees will be present for the summit, there is a cloud of uncertainty over Xi's visit here next week. It has been reliably learnt Xi has last visited India in 2019 for the 2nd edition of the informal summit at Mamallapuram. You remember how the Prime Minister was in fact dressed in the traditional
So the map,
this thing.
the map's interpretation, India calling it absurd, the China responding by saying that, you know, don't overread. By the way, how can China tell the other country to not overread their inclusion of our state inside their own territory? How do we not overread
And not
this
to
situation
overinterpret.
and
I mean,
not call it absurd? What else does one call it?
It was, you know, the term used is cartographic aggression, and I remember this term being used by most of the journalists who cover the kind of map, I call the map psychological war of China.
How is this being carried out in broad daylight? I mean, you're coming out and telling us that don't misinterpret us using your state within our territory on a new map in part of our awareness scheme back in Beijing. Don't overread this. Don't overread this misinterpretation.
I think if Xi Jinping is unable to come for this G20 meet, that means the map controversy, the build-up at you know, Aksai Chin,
right?
We must read all that in
the,
one
the
context.
meeting on the sidelines of the BRICS summit, the meeting on the sidelines of the BRICS
Disengagement,
summit. Right,
talks,
absolutely.
all that is going to, all that needs to be read
But
together.
so the NSG has been brought in. The police is going to be, you know, procuring more bolt cutters and chain cutters to stop these protests. They have studied the Western protests that have taken place, and apart from that, the city has been decked up. We already showed you those beautiful visuals. Now, hotels are also going to prepare to wow the G20 delegates with their special millets menu. There are wholesome flavors. This is the year of the millets in India as well. And when the Prime Minister visited United States for a full state visit, they spoke about, you know, how millets was of great significance. Jowar, ragi, foxtail, sorghum, bajra. At least one hotel will host a millet bar. Another hotel planning to impress guests with its kitchen garden. A chef said the plan is to showcase the entire landscape of India in one plate. People and all the delegates are bound. They're certainly bound to be going gaga over this particular aspect.